Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial, we are going to learn how to make this ice cream illustration from start to finish in Procreate. This is a pretty long tutorial as I wanted to capture how I draw this illustration and how I make some adjustments and changes to reach the final look that I want. Before we begin, I just would like to say a big thank you for all the support and feedback that I've been receiving from you guys. It means a lot to me and it encourages me to just keep creating more tutorials in future. So thank you so much for that. Y'all are just too awesome, guys. I really appreciate it. Alright, without much delay, let's begin. Firstly, we are going to sketch our ice cream illustration, and I'm going to start with the cone first. I'm going to select the transform tool to move the cone a little to the center. To get inspiration for your artwork, you can surf through websites like Pinterest or unsplash.com, and that's where I found many photographs of ice cream and illustrations of ice cream as well. So from there you can have a look at how the cones and ice creams are placed and how the shadows would look like. I'm going to lower the ice cream by selecting this transform tool. Yep. I'm going to select the selection tool here and going to make a line around this ice cream, so only that portion is selected, and then I'm going to resize it by selecting the transform tool just to make it a little wider. Once we are done with the sketching of ice cream, we are going to add more details to our illustration, and I'm going to create a new layer on top of this sketch layer, and that's where we are going to add details to the ice cream. But before that, we have to reduce the opacity of our initial sketch so that our details are more visible. Throughout this tutorial video, I have increased the speed of certain portions because the techniques in those portions are kind of repetitive or that we have seen before. And also don't forget to add some rough marking on the ice cream where our shadows will be casted and where the lighter areas would be, so it would be easier for us to color later. So we are done with sketching. Let's move on to inking. I'm going to temporarily hide the ice cream and create a new layer. Make sure it is at the bottom of our cone sketch. For coloring, we are going to use Studio Pen under inking, and I'm going to set the color of the cone. Now we are just going to trace over our sketch. You do not have to follow the sketch entirely. If you are not happy with it, you can move on to make adjustment along the way. We are going to do the color drop. Now I'm going to create a new layer and set the color to a lighter brown, and here we are going to make the stripe pattern of the cone. I'm going to begin with drawing lines vertically. Now I'm going to duplicate this entire layer, and I'm going to select the transform tool and move it to the right. After that, we are going to merge these two layers and duplicate that layer again, and we are going to repeat the same process for a few times. Once we are done, we are going to merge all these three layers together and duplicate it. I'm going to select this transform tool and make sure the magnetic snappings option is turned on so that we can have our horizontal stripes of the cone. Then you can duplicate these layers as well as to fill up the entire horizontal portions of the cone. Once we are done, we can merge all these layers together. I'm going to just erase these excess stripes of the cone here. This process is not necessary, but I just would like to make things a little tidy. Once we are done, I'm going to duplicate this layer just to reserve a clean copy of our cone pattern, unchecking the visibility of this duplicated layer. Now I'm going to click the transform tool to resize our pattern. It depends on the size of your cone, so I'm going to try and see which size of this pattern is going to suit my cone. Then I'm going to rotate this pattern clockwise. Then turn the clipping mask on for this layer. Now our stripe pattern is well hidden within the cone, and then you can proceed to resize the pattern as you wish. Next, we are going to draw the other part of the cone, and I'm going to create a new layer for this. Then we have to place it at the bottom of our current cone. Set the color to the same color and choose Studio Pen. Make sure the lines are connected so that when you do the color drop, it stays well within the boundary. For the stripes of this cone, we are going to duplicate our previous pattern and make sure to on the clipping mask, and I'm going to flip it horizontally. Once we are done with this, we are going to create darker shadings for our cone on a new separate layer, and make sure it is below the stripes and above the cone's layer, and select a darker brown for this. For shadings, I'm using the default airbrushes. You can choose any airbrush that you prefer. Now let's add some light reflection to our cone by using a lighter brown. Next, we are going to add shadings for our stripes. For this, we have to duplicate the layer and set the color to black. Use two fingers to swipe the layer to the right to turn the alpha lock on and press fill layer. And turn the alpha lock off again because we are going to use the Gaussian blur to disperse our shadow. Slide the screen to the right to increase the Gaussian blur. Then I'm going to select this transform tool to move the shadow around a little. You may place this shadow wherever you like, depending on the light source that you imagine for this illustration. I imagine my light source is coming from the front top of this illustration, slightly from the right. Then you can move on to reduce the opacity of this shadow so that it doesn't look too dark. Now we are going to repeat the same process to the other stripes. Then I'm going to just group the cones and its layers accordingly so that it is easy for us to view later on. And then I'm going to continue shading on our cone here with darker colors and lighter colors accordingly. Just a bit of reminder that our shadings are on this specific layer so that we don't mess up our original cone layer, and we can proceed to make changes to our shadings as we like, or totally delete it if we are not satisfied with it. Then we can move on to give shadings to our stripes here, and for that we are going to turn the alpha lock on. I'm going to start with darker colors to lighter colors, and I'm going to use airbrush for this. Sometimes it is a nice touch to add a little reflection on the other part of our object. This is basically the right reflection from the surrounding of our ice cream and projected onto the cone. Let's take a break from the cone and move to the ice cream itself. Before that, you may want to increase the opacity of your ice cream sketch according to your preference. And also I'm going to turn the visibility of the other ice cream sketch layer. Since I already have a detailed sketch of my ice cream, I'm going to create a new layer just below it, ignoring the original sketch of my ice cream. Then I'm going to select the lightest color choice of my ice cream, which is going to be purple in this case. Just like we did for our ice cream cone, here you just gotta follow over your ice cream sketch, and you do not have to strictly follow the line. You can proceed to make some changes along the way. Let me just increase the opacity of my sketch because I couldn't see much of the lines at the bottom. Just make sure the color drop fills the entire portion, otherwise you can just proceed to color manually on the blank area. Let me just erase some of the colored area to make it look more tidy. Next, we are going to add darker purple on a different layer to our ice cream sketch. And for that, I'm going to first reduce the opacity of our sketch. Now I'm going to create a new layer for this and choose the second darker purple. I'm also going to turn the clipping mask on for this layer so that the darker purple shadings are going to stay within the boundary of our base color here. Here you just follow the darker shadings that we have created in our sketch and proceed to mark those areas with the darker purple. Why the color purple? I have no idea. I just wanted to try a different color for ice cream because we are always used to see chocolate or vanilla for ice cream. So just to make things a little interesting, I chose purple color. Oh, by the way, we do have yum flavored ice cream which looks purple, so probably my choice of color is justified. we are coming to the most important technique or process of our tutorial today, which is smudging. So I have chosen the airbrush for smudging purpose, and you are going to pull and push the darker purple to achieve blurry effect around our shadows on the ice cream. Smudging is a very powerful technique in digital art which gives you a natural look to your illustration. Now let's speed things up a little. Next we are going to add gradually darker purple to our illustration as what we have done previously, and the techniques are same, where we add the darker shades first, following smudging techniques along those lines. Now we can begin our smudging techniques. Make sure to not cover the entire lighter purple with this darker color, because we want to create a gradual mixing of color. Let's take a little break from our ice cream and go back to our cone for a while. I'm going to try to resize the entire cones together, where I select the group of layers and going to click the transform tool to resize them. You can adjust a group of layers together without having them to be merged or combined together, and that is a very cool option we have in Procreate. Next, we are going to add even darker purple to our ice cream here, and for that we are going to combine all these layers together once we are satisfied. Make sure to create a new layer for this as well and select a darker purple to show the difference. Not forgetting to turn the clipping mask on. Next, we are going to simply follow the previous process that we have seen before. Next, I'm going to turn the alpha lock off of this layer because we are going to add a little ice cream dripping. Once you are okay with the shape, remember to turn the alpha lock on so that when you proceed to add this smudging or any other color, it is going to stay within that boundary. You can also adjust the shape of this dripping by clicking the transform tool. Once I have selected the area, I'm going to click this transform tool to adjust the shape of the dripping. Next, we are going to add lighter highlights to our ice cream, and I'm going to begin with a lighter purple. I'm going to add a little more ice cream to our illustration, and for that I'm going to turn the alpha lock off first and proceed to draw those excess part. Next, it is time to give a white highlight to our ice cream. This is my favorite part because it really makes your illustration to pop up. Once we are done, we are going to use the smudging tool to smudge those white highlights. Then I'm going to gradually add even darker purple just to make the illustration to have greater depth, if that makes sense. The more you add highlights and shadows to your illustration, the more lively or real it would become, and not just too flat. always a good practice for you to take a short break from working on a big project or a time-consuming illustration, and when you come back to it later, you would have fresh eyes to pick up any details that you may have missed previously. So let's take a short break and go back to the cone. We are going to add a darker shade to the cone that is at the back of the front cone, and for that we are going to add a layer on top of this and turn the clipping mask on. Then I'm going to choose a darker brown for this. We are still using airbrush. We are not going to shade the whole thing dark. We are just going to leave a kind of a gradient shadow at the back. Next we are going to add a little shadow beneath the ice cream, and for that we are going to create a new layer and turn the clipping mask on. I thought of adding this shadow beneath the ice cream as to make the ice cream is overflowing from the cone. I'm going to readjust the dark shade on the cone here. And for that I'm going to select the layer that has all the shadings of our cone. Next I'm going to choose a lighter brown to dilute the dark shade of our cone, and then reapply the darker shade afterwards. Next we are going to do a little experiment on the cone pattern, because I feel the lines are too perfectly straight. And for that I'm going to select both the shadow and the stripe pattern layers, and then choose liquify option. Now you can move on to adjust the whole stripe pattern according to your preference. I'm just going to experiment with the effect that I'm going to get by doing this adjustment, and you can always come back later to readjust it. Okay, now I feel like I need to add a lighter tone to this stripe, so for that I'm going to turn the alpha lock on. We will come back to the cone later. Now we can try to add any background color for our illustration. I'm going to create a new layer and put it at the bottom of all the layers that we have been working on so far. And I'm going to choose a very light pink. Next we are going to give depth to our background by adding some darker tone to it. We are going to do this on a new layer above the background layer, and we are going to choose a darker pink. I'm going to give the darker tone at the corners of our background, so that we can make the ice cream look like it is in the spotlight or at the center stage. And of course, you can always use the eraser tool to readjust the darker tone. And let's not forget to add a shadow reflection of our ice cream at the bottom. Next, I'm going to show you a little trick on how to adjust the flavor of the cone or ice cream. And by flavor, I mean the color of those portions. And let me just show you for the cone. We are going to combine all the cone layers together first. We are not going to need the reserved stripe pattern anymore. Next, we are going to head to the adjustment tool and press the first option. And this is where we are going to change the color of our entire cone. You can play around with the saturation or brightness of this part, and you can see which color that you like the most. Now let's get back to the original cone, and I'm going to readjust the stripe pattern once more by using the liquify tool. As a final touch, I'm going to add more tones and highlights to the ice cream. At this portion, I'm going to add a little more layer because I feel the current part here looks too big to be a layer on its own. So I'm going to just adjust it by adding a darker purple. Next, I'm going to turn the alpha lock on again for this layer, and I'm going to start the smudging process. So guys, we are going to reach the end of our tutorial today. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something new today. And this is by far the longest video I have created, and I wanted to make sure that I do not cut out most of the readjustment and trial and errors that I have done in this tutorial, because I wanted to show you that we can always come back to a certain portion and make some readjustment to make it look even better. If you enjoyed today's tutorial, please let me know in the comment section below and give me a thumbs up maybe. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you want to see more Procreate tutorials in future. And finally, I'm going to need a favor from you guys. Please let me know in the comment section below on what tutorial I should do in future. Any kind of illustration or anything that you want me to draw and teach you. It would be a pleasure for me to work on it. And that's it for today. I will see you in a new Procreate tutorial soon. Goodbye.